Amusement parks are designed to survive mechanical failure. They're not designed to survive stupid decisions. In this episode, we're breaking down the most dumb amusement park deaths ever recorded. Cases where people ignored warnings, argued with staff, or chased one last clip. And every story ends exactly the way you think it won't. It was July 14th, 2014, at a local water park in San Antonio, Texas. The afternoon heat pushed crowds toward water rides, where shouting, rushing water, and constant motion blended. The River Rapids attraction was known for soaking riders, not flipping rafts or trapping bodies beneath the current. Alyssa Moreno was 20, a community college student in Laredo finishing nursing prerequisites while working weekends at a daycare to cover books and fees. Friends knew her as quiet and easygoing, rarely seeking attention. That July trip was her first vacation without family, squeezed between extra shifts and a tight budget, leaving everyone tired, sunburned, and filming casually. By early afternoon, they lined up for the Rapids ride. It was a basic circular raft attraction, 6 molded seats, individual lap restraints, and water churning through concrete channels. Signs at the entrance warned riders to stay seated, keep restraints fastened, and distribute weight evenly. The operator slowed the loading process and pointed out that 3 riders were sitting on one side. He asked them to spread out properly and reminded them to keep their restraints fastened. They shifted slightly, still uneven, joked about it, and waved him off. A bystander near the railing recorded them as the raft drifted away from the platform. The raft entered the channel, spinning through shallow drops. It bumped and splashed like normal. Water flow was running at a higher setting typical for peak summer crowds, making the raft move faster through wider sections. As the ride slowed near a bend, Alyssa deliberately unbuckled her lap restraint. Ignoring the posted warnings, she stood halfway up from her seat so everyone could fit into a group selfie. One of the riders reached toward her, but she laughed and steadied herself with one hand on the raft rim. The other hand held a phone. The channel ahead widened into a straight stretch where currents crossed. The raft rotated sideways and hesitated. Other riders later said it looked wrong, like it stalled instead of spinning. The current caught the raft broadside. It snapped hard toward the outer wall and flipped without warning. All 6 riders were thrown into the water when the raft overturned. 3 surfaced right away, coughing and grabbing the concrete edge. 2 others broke free moments later and pulled themselves toward the side. Alyssa did not come back up. The raft settled low in the channel, held down by the force of the moving water, its underside pressed flat against the floor. Investigators found the raft turned sideways and lodged in a widened channel, where uneven water pressure built beneath it. High flow, uneven weight, and a disengaged lap restraint caused it to flip and stay pinned. Witnesses saw Alyssa's arms stop moving first. Operators cut power, but the water pressure eased seconds too late. Alyssa surfaced unresponsive. Lifeguards pulled them out and called for help. Paramedics arrived in about 7 minutes, attempted CPR, and continued resuscitation during transport. Alyssa was pronounced dead shortly after reaching the hospital. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as drowning. Her lungs were filled with water. Bruising across her chest and shoulders showed sustained pressure, consistent with being pinned underwater. There were no fatal head injuries or internal damage. Loss of consciousness was attributed to oxygen deprivation. The death was ruled accidental. The ride was shut down and modified weeks later. Alyssa's daycare closed for a day so co-workers could attend her funeral. Her nursing books were donated to a local scholarship fund. It was September 9th, 2017, at a regional amusement park outside Bengaluru, India, where a company outing packed the grounds as heat lingered and high-intensity rides dispatched full seats non-stop. Rohit Malhotra, 29, worked in mobile phone retail in Bengaluru, handling warranty issues and customer complaints through long, crowded shifts. He lived at home, helped with expenses, and set aside small savings for a future business course. His heavier build often made restraint checks difficult on high-intensity rides, something he had encountered before but usually laughed off. During a company outing to the park, Rohit decided he wanted to ride one of the thrill attractions. When he was seated on the pendulum ride, the restraint indicator stayed red, signaling an improper fit due to load limits. The operator told him to exit. With co-workers watching and the ride moments from dispatch, Rohit argued to try again, unwilling to step away and be singled out. After stepping back into the seat, Rohit adjusted himself repeatedly. Surveillance footage later showed him forcing the shoulder restraint down hard until it clicked once. The harness appeared secure, but it had only partially engaged and was not fully locked into position. The operator performed a visual check, saw the green indicator and the harness sitting down on his shoulders, and cleared the seat for dispatch. Rohit settled back into the seat as the cycle began. The ride launched immediately. It was one of the park's most aggressive attractions, swinging riders more than 100 feet while inverting them repeatedly. The restraint system depended on precise sensor calibration and full locking engagement. Because Rohit had forced the harness into a false partial lock rather than achieving a proper fit, the restraint was not fully engaged. It sat high on his shoulders, leaving excess vertical space. As the pendulum gained speed, centrifugal force lifted Rohit's body upward. On the first full rise, the restraint shifted instead of holding firm. His hips lifted above the seat edge. When the ride inverted, gravity pulled his upper body through the gap beneath the harness. By the peak of the swing, his legs cleared the seat entirely, and he slipped free. Rohit was ejected feet first, then rotated backward by the momentum of the arm. He struck a fixed steel maintenance stair platform positioned beneath the ride's swing path. His head hit the metal edge at speed, producing a sharp impact heard across the ride area. His body fell to the concrete below and remained motionless. Blood spread quickly beneath his head and along the base of the stairs. The ride continued its programmed cycle for roughly 40 seconds, gradually slowing rather than stopping abruptly. Riders screamed as they passed overhead, clearly seeing Rohit's body below. Staff activated the emergency stop, which reduced power but did not halt the ride instantly, consistent with pendulum ride design. Security pushed back onlookers and sealed the area. Medical staff reached Rohit within minutes. He was unresponsive, with visible skull fractures and massive bleeding. There was no pulse or breathing. Paramedics arrived approximately 7 minutes later and pronounced him dead at the scene. The post-mortem listed catastrophic blunt force head trauma as the cause of death. The skull fractures caused immediate brain failure, making survival impossible. No alcohol or drugs were present. The restraint showed incomplete locking. Video evidence confirmed deliberate forcing of the restraint into a partial lock before dispatch. Investigators cited unsafe rider interference with the restraint system as the primary factor. Rohit's parents later filed a civil case against the park. It was August 3, 2016, at a water park in Phoenix, Arizona. By late morning, heat sat heavy over packed walkways. Temperatures passed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Whistles sounded, pumps roared, and safety rules looped, blending into the background as families queued, restless, slick with sunscreen, waiting for slides to clear. Daniel Kress was 38 and worked as a shift supervisor at a warehouse in Glendale. He ran crews, filled in when people called out, and liked being known as dependable. After a doctor warned him about high blood pressure, he lost nearly 40 pounds. The physical change led him to take more physical risks without medical clearance. At home, Daniel was a hands-on dad to 2 young kids and had been married since his early 20s. He liked recording small moments on his phone. Nothing public, just clips sent to family chats. In the months before the incident, co-workers noticed he increasingly joked about still having it and proving he wasn't fragile. It was his day off. By noon, the heat was brutal and the park was packed, with lines spilling across hot concrete and lifeguards shouting to be heard. Daniel pointed to the tallest speed slide, a near-vertical body slide built for maximum drop and acceleration. Signs and staff repeatedly warned riders to go feet first. Daniel laughed it off, strapped his phone into a waterproof chest pouch, and ignored another warning about head-first entries increasing speed and risk at the shallow runout. When it was his turn, Daniel didn't sit the way he was told. He leaned forward, tucked his arms in tight, and pushed off head first. A fixed overhead safety camera later confirmed his launch angle, and body position differed from the required posture. The slide's angle forced him to pick up speed almost immediately. Water slammed against his shoulders as the tube narrowed. When he burst out of the exit, his head was the first point of contact. His forehead struck the concrete lip at the end of the slide. His neck violently folded under the force, while the rest of his body continued forward due to momentum. His torso folded, then struck the water's surface flat. People nearby saw his body slide several feet and roll face down. He did not attempt to lift his head or arms. Riders exiting behind him collided with his lower body, rolling him face down in the shallow runout. Screaming started immediately. Lifeguards activated emergency protocols and entered the pool. Daniel was pulled onto the deck within seconds. His body was unresponsive, with no purposeful movement, and his eyes remained open but unfocused. His phone case was cracked across his chest. Lifeguards initiated emergency care while another staff member called 911. Security footage later documented the precise impact point at the slide exit. Paramedics arrived approximately 7 minutes after the call. They immobilized his neck, assessed breathing and pulse, and transferred him onto a stretcher as guests were cleared from the area. No spontaneous breathing or response was observed. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival at the emergency department, per hospital protocol. The medical examiner determined that Daniel died from a high cervical spine fracture. The impact fractured vertebrae at the base of the skull, disrupting the spinal cord and brainstem, which immediately stopped breathing and heart regulation. The report stated survival was not possible given the injury severity. The death was ruled an accident caused by unsafe riding behavior. Toxicology tests showed no alcohol or drugs. Investigators noted that warning signs were visible and that staff issued verbal instructions multiple times. Afterward, the park installed a physical entry barrier preventing headfirst launches. Daniel's phone was returned to his wife. The final video file ended abruptly just before the exit, cutting off mid-motion. It was July 28, 2018, inside a horror tunnel ride at a large amusement park in Guangzhou, China. The afternoon was hot, lines were long, and the ride cycled continuously. Dim lighting, artificial fog, and loud sound effects masked small technical problems that blended easily into the attraction's intended chaos. Lin Xiao was 32 and worked as a retail clerk at a mid-range clothing store, spending most days on her feet, folding clothes, restocking shelves, and calming irritated customers. She lived modestly, rarely traveled, and had not taken a proper day off in nearly a year. The park visit was planned for a friend's birthday, meant to be light and forgettable. Lin wasn't chasing attention online. She only recorded short clips to send to friends, usually small moments to remember a rare outing. The horror tunnel was an indoor dark ride, built to look rundown on purpose. Exposed pipes, flickering lights, fake electrical panels, and dangling wires were part of the set design. Warning signs at the entrance instructed riders to remain seated, keep their hands inside the vehicle, and avoid touching props. Operators repeated the rules as cars loaded, but the line moved fast, and most riders treated it casually. Lin boarded a 2-row car with 3 friends. As the ride began, she lifted her phone, filming the darkness and sudden flashes. The car moved slowly through tight corridors while animatronics lunged from the walls. Midway through the ride, the car stalled briefly near a section designed to look like a flooded electrical room. Yellow and black hazard stripes were painted along the wall, and fake sparks flashed overhead. Lin leaned sideways for a better angle. The lighting was low, and she mistook an electrified effect panel for part of the set. A high-voltage spark effect unit was built into the wall as part of the set, normally protected by a clear plastic barrier, and a small warning label indicating not to touch the electrified prop. Surveillance footage later showed Lin extending her arm outside the car, reaching past the clear safety barrier to steady herself against the electrified wall while continuing to record. Her fingers made contact with the electrified effect rod. Witnesses in the car felt a sudden jolt as Lynn's body stiffened. Her phone dropped into her lap as her arm locked in place against the wall. The electrical current traveled through her hand, across her chest, and into a grounded metal handrail beside the seat, completing the circuit through her body. Sparks were visible for a brief moment, captured on a camera mounted near the ceiling. The ride continued moving for several seconds before stopping automatically due to a power fault. Lynn collapsed forward in her seat, unresponsive. Her friends screamed and tried to shake her, but she did not move. Smoke lingered in the tunnel and emergency lights switched on as operators initiated an evacuation. Staff reached the car within 3 minutes and found Lynn unresponsive, with no breathing or pulse. Paramedics arrived about 7 minutes later, attempted CPR and defibrillation, and pronounced her dead at the scene. The post-mortem ruled electrocution as the cause, noting electrical burns on her hand and cardiac arrest caused by current passing through her body. Investigators confirmed she had reached past a safety barrier and made direct contact with an intentionally electrified effect prop inside the tunnel. The ride closed that day for inspection and safety review, and her phone was returned, its final video cutting to black. It was October 6, 2016, at a regional fairground, where crowds moved beneath glowing midway lights as a Ferris wheel turned steadily above damp pavement on an overcast evening. Evan Brooks was 27 and had recently begun trying to build a small online following through short vlogs and stunt clips. He worked full-time as a delivery driver out of Tacoma, spending long days on the road and filming whenever he had time off. His videos were simple: rides, heights, risky angles meant to look fearless. Friends said he liked showing he was calm in situations that made others nervous, especially when there was a camera involved. That evening, Evan arrived alone after finishing his route early. Weather reports earlier in the day had mentioned scattered thunderstorms moving toward Pierce County, but the fair remained open. The air was warm and heavy, clouds gathering low over the grounds. Evan bought multiple tickets for the Ferris wheel, telling friends later online that he wanted storm footage from above the fair. Warning lights near the ride signaled that weather could cause delays, and recorded announcements repeated that the wheel might stop without notice. Evan boarded anyway, phone already recording. The gondola rose slowly as wind pushed lightly against the cabin. Below him, the midway lights blurred into long streaks across the wet pavement. As the wheel climbed higher, thunder rolled somewhere beyond the fairgrounds. Evan continued filming, leaning toward the open side window to keep the clouds in frame. Other riders later said he appeared focused on his phone, adjusting angles instead of watching the ride. Near the top of the rotation, the wheel slowed as operators prepared for a possible shutdown. Wind gusts rocked the gondola gently. The metal frame creaked overhead. Evan shifted forward again, stretching his arm out to capture the darkening sky. A sudden flash lit the clouds nearby. The thunder followed almost immediately. Witnesses said Evan flinched at the sound. In the same moment, the gondola swayed sharply in the wind. Still leaning forward with one hand braced against the window frame, Evan lost his balance. His upper body tipped past the open side. Security footage later showed him trying to pull back, his phone slipping from his hand as his weight shifted outward. With only a low metal lap bar across the opening, his torso slid over it and through the gap. In less than a second, his hips cleared the seat edge, and he fell from the gondola. Operators stopped the wheel immediately and called emergency services at 8:17 p.m. Fair staff cleared the area as responders arrived within minutes. Evan was found on the ground beneath the Ferris wheel, unresponsive and bleeding heavily from head and chest injuries. Paramedics attempted resuscitation, but no pulse or breathing was detected. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner later ruled the cause of death multiple blunt force injuries from a fall from height. Fractures to the skull, spine, and internal organs indicated death occurred instantly on impact. Investigators found no mechanical failure with the gondola, and confirmed weather conditions had not yet reached shutdown thresholds when Evan boarded. Witness statements and video showed he had been leaning out of the open side while filming when he lost his balance. The Ferris wheel closed for the night as storms moved in. Evan's phone was recovered near the base of the ride, its final recording ending in blurred lights and wind noise just before the fall. It was May 21st, 2015, at a local amusement park in Staffordshire. Morning operations were routine as a gravity-driven mine train coaster cycled through a low stone tunnel. Inspections showed no faults, and the ride had already completed dozens of runs without incident. Mark Ellison was 21, a college student from Derbyshire spending the afternoon with a woman he had been dating for only a few weeks. He had talked up the park on the drive over, joking about how tame most of the rides were and how he never got nervous on coasters. Friends later said he liked showing confidence in front of dates, especially on thrill rides. When they reached the mine train, he waved it off as slow and harmless, then suggested they ride anyway just to warm up. They boarded near the middle of the train. Mark pulled the lap bar down and glanced back at the rows behind them as the train rolled out of the station. The lift hill carried them toward the first tunnel. Ahead, the front cars slowed unexpectedly near the crest. An automatic sensor detected a spacing problem and triggered an emergency stop. For several seconds, the train sat motionless, half on the lift and half beyond it. Then the chain released. Without enough momentum to crest the hill, the train began to roll backward under its own weight. At first, the movement was slow. Riders felt the shift as gravity pulled them into their seats. The cars crept into a narrow themed mine tunnel, built only for forward-moving trains. Inside, the rock ceiling curved low over the track, leaving only safe clearance for riders who remained fully seated. As the rollback continued, the speed increased. Some riders grabbed their restraints. Mark twisted his shoulders, trying to see what was happening behind them. Still buckled, he pushed upward against the lap bar and lifted his torso to look back down the tunnel. The motion raised his head several inches above the safe-seated position, placing it into the tunnel's clearance envelope. Security cameras later showed the moment clearly. As the train passed beneath the lowest beam, the backward motion drove Mark's skull into the concrete ceiling. The impact forced his neck violently forward and down, compressing the upper vertebrae. His body collapsed instantly, dropping limp against the seat as the train continued rolling. Less than a second later, the rear section of the train struck the stalled front cars. The jolt sent riders forward into their restraints and into each other. Mark's head snapped sideways under the force, his body unmoving. Emergency brakes engaged and stopped the train inside the tunnel. Operators reached the cars within moments and unlocked the restraints. Mark showed no breathing and no response. Paramedics arrived within minutes and began resuscitation attempts on the platform. No pulse was detected. He was pronounced dead shortly after being transported to the hospital. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death a high cervical spine fracture. The initial ceiling strike had severed the spinal cord at the base of the skull, stopping breathing and heart regulation instantly. Investigators determined the rollback was a routine emergency response and that the fatal injury occurred when Mark lifted himself out of the seated position. The death was ruled an accident caused by unsafe rider movement. The coaster reopened weeks later, with additional warning signs reminding riders to remain seated at all times. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this, watch the next video.